Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the Artists Index. And today we have a new friend, actually, because I have never met this guest before. Actually, I did way back in the days before the pandemic. It was at a show at either the Colo Colo Gallery on Center Street or at the other location at the Kilburn Mill. And so it's been a while. And I was asked to review a show that Don Wilkinson, our local art writer extraordinaire, curated. And since he couldn't review his own show, he asked me to do it for him. And that's when I got to actually reunite with Keith once again. And oops, I let go of his name. And so all that in mind, we'll talk more about it as soon as our guest, which you already know his name is Keith because I dropped that. Anyway, please introduce yourself and spell your name. That's important.
My name is Keith Francis, Keith I'm a artist and educator, and I'm from originally Fairhaven, Massachusetts.
Great. Thanks so much. Wow. I mean, you have, if I was to do a series of podcasts on a specific category, it's artists who either started off as designers or went into design to keep food on the table, as it were, to keep their art practice, their painting practice going. So how did that all work out for you? Was it one or the other? Did you go into art first? Fine art, and then design came second, or how did that work?
I would say definitely went into the fine art approach, and then my sophomore year, we had at UMass Dartmouth, we had to take either visual design or illustration. So I chose graphic design because I knew I could make a living at it. And I went through the fine art program and the visual design program. And I've been working as a graphic designer. I graduated in '89 from UMass Dartmouth and worked in it my whole life. I've been a graphic designer, senior designer, then a art director. And then I owned my own firm for 20 years in Boston. So design has been very good to me, but I've also been exhibiting since I graduated college, fine art. So fine art was my passion. Graphic design paid the bills.
Exactly. It's a story that's repeated over and over in town, that's for sure. I started off as a painter and ended up as a bad graphic designer, but ran two small advertising agencies because when I was at the University of Miami, two of the guys that my classmates were retired designers, advertising guys, and they thought I ought to have a fallback skill beside working in restaurants.
Yes, exactly.
So you said scene designer?
Senior designer.
Oh, senior designer. Okay.
Senior designer. So you work your way up. You start as the entry level. And then over the years, you become a graphic designer, senior designer, associate art director, then an art director of different firms.
All the way up.
Throughout Boston. So I was in Boston for 25 years.
There was a gentleman from this area, can't remember his first name, Oliveira, I think was his last name. There's been several designers from this area that did quite well up in Boston. I don't know if you remember him.
No, I don't know the gentleman.
Okay.
So it was it's been good for me. I have no complaints. I did it for 30 years, and then I had the opportunity to teach, and I took it. And I've been very happy for 7 years as a visual design instructor at New
Mhm.
Bedford Oak.
Wow. Let's jump to the New Bedford Voc. And the students there. How has the caliber of students changed, advanced or declined or, gone horizontal, however you want to put it?
COVID was a real problem with attention span, maturity, where all schools experienced this. It was very difficult past 2 years, 2.5 years. We're hoping that this year we'll have a better student body and the kids will be more acclimated to their assignments. But it was difficult throughout.
Yeah, they have that whole sociability thing, that whole
Exactly.
traditional high school experience that they were just, I hate to use the term robbed because it wasn't a malicious thing.
But it was taken away.
It was
In
taken
your
away.
prom, the socialization skills are minimal. So hopefully we're going to get back on track and get them educated and give them the confidence they need to proceed forward.
If there was a silver lining to all of this, would you say that it better help them prepare for what looks like? And then I guess in the graphic arts, as freelancers, this has been going on for as long as the technology's been available. It's just pretty much telling them this is how you work remotely. Back in the day, I remember some of the publications, they would have the folks from New York, the publishers fly into Providence, check out the blue lines and or the chromolines and sign off on it and get back on the plane. And I remember when fax machines came in, it was like, oh, I don't have to go to my production house every single day. I can just send him stuff and get it back and look at it. And then if I really need the final eyeball and sign off, then here we go. So do you think that in retrospect, and of course this is in retrospect another 5 years up the line, that this might have actually been beneficial to them and they didn't know it?
No, I don't think it's beneficial at all.
Really?
There were just too many negative consequences.
Yeah.
And they really stressed out. It was, and it has to the teachers. It was difficult all around. So I'm very optimistic about this year forward.
Let me ask you a question. Is any of this going to seep into your future work? These experiences?
With the students?
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no. My work it does have a large social aspect, but I separate my teaching from my private work. I have to separate it,
Okay.
but for myself.
Okay.
So when I'm in my studio, I'm Keith Francis, the fine artist.
Mhm.
This is my time to embellish my dreams and what I want to accomplish. When I'm in the classroom, I'm 100% there for them, for the students, and I'm a teacher. So I have to separate that.
Right. Yeah, that I can understand. I didn't make myself clear enough. The pandemic and all these experiences of the pandemic, because I know you're very attuned to history as it happens. And that was one of the things that really made me appreciate your work, is that our thinking, our sensibilities are quite similar. I got some of the stuff that you did almost instantly, where a lot of people were just, scratching their chin. I'm not trying to, build myself up as a hero or whatever, but sort of like the same train of thought, let's put it that way. So I was just sort of curious that, well, based on what I just said, how long does it take for some of the your social consciousness from events or periods of time? How long does it take for it to seep into your consciousness and then for you to say, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to make a piece. I'm going to do a series, that kind of thing.
I would say a month to 2 months. sometimes 3 months. It has to go through a few iterations upstairs in my brain.
Mhm.
And then when it takes hold, I'll just start to create the piece and start to work on it. And as you know, as an artist, what you initially start with, it evolves and changes because you're having an immediacy of conversations with that piece, and it's evolving and it's getting deeper as you're thinking about it. It's changing in front of you, and hopefully, when you're done the piece, it's become more than what you started with. Hopefully. And if it doesn't, then it just becomes scrap and you start again.
Do you so yeah, everybody wants to know about process. And to me, process isn't the manual aspect of it. To me, the process is the subconscious, conscious aspect of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%.
As you said, you approach it, you get a brain flash. Or if, you know, you're going for a walk and what is it? Albert Einstein said something about, to the effect it's, the more you think about something, the less likely it's going to manifest itself. The moment you stop thinking about it is when it pops into your head. I used to have a habit when I was in undergraduate school and graduate school of when I would just get seized up, you know, like your brain would just go solidify on you. I would just start sweeping or doing something very, very mundane. And then in the middle of it, it was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I was trying to. It's like being constipated. There's no, there's no other way around it. So I'm going to ask you about a specific question. The moon landing and the juxtaposition to the summer of unrest.
Yes. So in that piece, it's called A Cautionary Tale. It's quite a large piece. It has old steel plates with an LED monitor on it. And I painted an astronaut, and then I stripped it away to make it look very old, like it was actually from the 60s. So you have a NASA astronaut that's juxtaposed with a black and white video of Selma to Montgomery. So what you have is you have NASA that put over $5 billion in the 60s a year into the space program. And that came under, well, it was before President Kennedy, but he really launched it, that proposed for the United States on the man on the moon by the end of the 60s, which we accomplished. And I remember that very well. We got out from elementary school, East Faven Elementary School, to come home and to watch the moon landing. So you have the money to put the man on the moon, yet you had civil unrest. The Civil Rights Acts didn't take place until 64 and 65. So I wanted to show that brutal scenes that were captured on television when you had the Selma to Montgomery protest march against the money that we put to put the man on the moon. And are we making the right choices? Because it seems we're still making these choices today about where we allocate resources.
You're absolutely correct. It's not almost as though it is repeating itself. History is repeating itself. This fascination now with Mars. It's Mars,
Yes.
Mars.
Yeah, to colonize. So we're gonna be able to let's face it. We're not gonna be to colonize space. Our bodies cannot take the gravity that it does to our body over sustained time. It's not going to happen. Dr. Carl Sagan said something, I'll read it. Our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we are some privileged position in the universe. We're challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great envelope of cosmic darkness. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint of help that will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves.
Yeah,
That
because
is
nobody
powerful.
can. It is.
We have to save our world now.
Right.
And we have so many challenges.
And those challenges really have not, they're all the same. You read the news, there's been some horrible situations, of those situations, they've turned into almost landmark cases. And yet the behaviors don't change whatsoever. I mean, people have cell phones, for God's sakes. If you're going to do something wrong as a public official, or as a public safety official, it's going to be recorded. And then to come up with a law that says, well, you can't be video or recording the incident, or whether it's occurring to you or it's occurring to someone else within 8 feet, is ludicrous. Because if it wasn't for the video, it would continue to be a you said, he said kind of situation. So the technology that that you presented in this show, the Wise Guys, that's GUI SE, as in disguise. None of you could really hide your real emotions, your real intent, which was kind of interesting that the show was talked about, a guise, but none of you, and I mean this, by not being successful, you were successful. So the pieces that you created really touched on some, well, they're things that I've gotten in touch with. For the longest time, I was an abstract painter who decided, who cares about how I feel? Who cares about how I feel about other things in the world, because I'm just one person. So I'm just going to paint nothing. I'm going to paint cold-bloodedly. I'm just going to make squiggles on canvas and take it from there. But as I've begun this journey on a similar path as to what you're doing, it's amazing that, boy, you never run out of ideas.
No, and the piece that you did, that triptych that you showed with the whale, there's a lot of emotion in that. Your heart is in that. Your head is in there. And that's the power of you and individuals as an artist. You captured that and you expressed that. That's powerful. That's magic.
Yeah, it is a certain kind of magic. Let me ask you a question, though. How distanced are you from your work? In other words, when people, as you just mentioned, that triptych that I did, the Children of the Common Creator, Deathless Spirits, there was a lot of emotion, and I was never quite sure that I nailed it, that I got it across, because it's an allegory. And, to see, some people are like, oh my God, that's awfully violent. Well, killing whales is not exactly a picnic in a park, and it's not about killing whales, although it is about killing whales. It's about the mastery over, the bondage over, a bunch of these, this white supremacy. That's basically what it's all about.
Yes.
And Sagan was talking about space, and basically all I could see, like a little ticker tape as you're talking in my brain, is like white supremacy, white supremacy. And people think, oh, that's just for the guys who wear the pointy hats and the gowns. No, it's a state of mind, right? So my question is, do you ever really know what you're doing? Because that's the problem I have. I really don't know what I did, even though people are telling me, and yes, we want authentication, we want validation, but in my own heart of hearts, sometimes it takes me a couple of months from not seeing a piece, sometimes it's a couple of years, and go, oh my God, I never saw that.
Yes, I know exactly what I'm doing as far as me as the artist and the message I want to deliver. How it gets received, I cannot control, and that's okay. It may go right, it may go left, but it'll be interpreted differently. They don't have to follow what I had in my mind, and I accept that, and that's okay. That's fine. I cannot control people's perspective.
Yeah, the other night, when they had you four presented the artist talk, and the four is Joe Fontina, Keith Francis, Seth Rainville, and Don Wilkinson. And when you were having that artist talk, this topic popped up. And that was one of the first artist talks that I ever went to that I wish didn't end. There was more time, because sometimes you go to some of these artist talks and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to stick a pencil in my eye.
Yeah, yeah.
Not because you feel you're better, because it's just like this awkwardness, you know. But it reminded me of uh, Ernst Gombrich, who wrote The History of Art. In some school systems, that was the art history book, you know, similar to Abrams and a couple of other um, visionaries, you know, of their day in art history. But he wrote a book called Art and Illusion, and in it he said, you know, he mentioned something called the beholder's share. That what you do is totally irrelevant. What is relevant is how the beholder accepts it, you know. And I find that, you know, there are people who take great offense at that. If I paint a big pink painting and some, you know, a bunch of people say that the it's all brown, how am I supposed to take that?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's very interesting. A person that I read a lot is Carl Jung.
Mm-hmm.
Symbolism. That has been a cornerstone of my work, and I really rely on symbolism and our relationship to it and our interpretations of it. And I think that's something that has helped me in my work, where you had that book that's helped you in your work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How has your work evolved from in fact, the first time and last time I saw you, you know, till this show, you were doing those crumpled
Still,
steel. Exactly.
I was doing the steel, and that was probably 10 years ago, maybe a little less.
Yeah.
And then when I started at M.F.A, they gave me the opportunity and partial funding to get my M.F.A, which was always a dream of mine. So I took the opportunity and ran with it. I went to Mass Art for 3 years. I received my M.F.A, and at that time, I had to declare what I was going to do and how I was going to approach my M.F.A. And it had to do with my passion for social, political issues and discourse. So that's how my work has changed. I went with something that I was very much interested in and that motivated me. So that's how it's changed, and it's evolving and getting deeper, and it's becoming larger than myself now. The work and what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know the feeling. What was the first piece that you did? The first piece that uh it sounds like one of these trite new age terms. What was the first piece that brought you to consciousness?
Let's vote. Let's
Let's
vote
vote.
as an artwork, as a conceptual mixed media piece examining racial segregation and disenfranchisement of African Americans' right to vote in the South. So that was a commission piece that I did for Delaware State University. It was for an exhibition commemoration of the Civil Rights Movement, 64 to 68. I did the piece, and they asked me to give an artist lecture at the university. So I went down to Delaware. This was in 2014. And before that, I was doing the steel pieces and other, beautiful aesthetic pieces, but no power to them, if I could say that, Ron. And they presented it with the other pieces, but it was really presented on a very large wall all to itself. They painted the wall black, and these pieces have lights on them. And if I say a little about it, you have white people can always vote. It's always a yes, where the African Americans could never vote because of the racial segregation and they couldn't vote until the Civil Rights Act of 64 and 65. So they were excluded from voting. And several people, African Americans, and I would say Delaware is somewhat south, almost at the Mason-Dixon line. They were crying crying, tell me the stories of their grandmothers and their families disenfranchised from that vote. And I've never experienced that before. And I knew that I was doing something that was bigger than myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite a shock, isn't it, when you when you have people come to your show, and I'm laughing because it happened last year. Um, when you have people come to a show and it's like, you have the wine, the cheese, the crackers, and some little bottles of water, but you never ever think you should have put out a box of tissues.
Yes.
It's quite a shock. So based on that, how did that jettison you, nudge you, push you, shove you to continue on?
Well, I realized that I was speaking in a voice that was authentic, and it resonated with me, something I was passionate about. And when I had the opportunity to acquire my M.F.A, I said, this is where I want to go with the work. This is what I want to do. Because it was just so powerful. I remember that woman crying like it was yesterday and telling me her story. And I said, this is where I want to go. It felt right. And I knew I was in a good space.
Yeah.
As an artist and as a human being.
Okay. So let's categorize your social consciousness, and what I mean by categorization. And we're gonna have to take a break. I'll give you the sign for the break and then come back again. Just based on what I know from the show, what's weird is your atomic war piece. What's the title of that? The pinball.
Jesus, what is it? Wait, hold on here. Give
Yeah,
me
yeah. All right.
okay.
While you're looking for that, I mean, and while you're looking for that, for the name of it, I was like, whoa, it brought back childhood memories. I mean, I come from the generation of duck and cover. I went to
Yes.
Catholic school, and they told us to grab our rosaries and go into this, spider infested basement and pretty much pray that we survived, which was ludicrous, because if you survived, you die a more horrible death. But bringing all these things back, it was kind of interesting. There was that. Then there was immigration, which was brought back a flashback, for members of my mother's side of the family from coming from Portugal. And there was all these triggers that were quite powerful, and stories that haven't gone away. They've just evolved. The immigrants have changed, but immigration still exists. The bias towards immigrants has not changed. It's just as bad, if not worse. So
The piece is called A Strange Game, the only game you never want to play.
that's right. And then the other flash I had was my uncle Armin, who was at Nagasaki. In fact, I'm waiting for my cousin to send me that photograph of him standing in front of a big sign that says, Nagasaki, occupational forces of the United States, so on and so forth. You'll never run out of subject matter, will you? Once you've gone down this rabbit hole.
No, never. You can revisit our history. I did a piece called Welcome, which was a aspect of our history of our immigration in the United States since 1790. And it was taking American flags, and it was very antagonistic stance that I took on this, but it relayed our history of what we've done to immigrants and to dispel the myth of everyone's welcomed, because people weren't welcomed. In fact, the American Indians weren't able to vote, I think, until 1925. Native Americans couldn't vote in the United States. That's to me, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. What's on the horizon?
On the horizon, I just had a significant horizon event, a foundation and a contemporary museum have gotten together and they've just purchased one of my works. And this is a museum that purchases Aweiwei, Carol Walker, Banksy, and they want to start acquiring my work for their museum. So this is happening as we're speaking now.
Wow.
And I'm presently completing a book of my work that has been in the works since COVID, and I'm at the point of completing it now.
That's quite what's the word? It's quite a validation.
Well, thank you. I'm been blessed.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And as far as education, school has already started for the teachers Wednesday and Thursday for training, and then Monday we start.
Mhm.
And then we will go until the rest of the year. And I teach visual design and communications.
Mhm. Do you ever does this your teaching experience ever overlap sometimes into your artistic experience of life? In other words, you're in a classroom, and again, you know, you're not thinking about anything in particular. You're just doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're teaching your course, your lesson, and then all of a sudden, as the words come out of your mouth, you go, "Oh my goodness, I never thought of that before," and I can't wait till the bell rings and we go home because I'm going to jump into the studio and get going on this thing.
Yeah.
Does that happen?
That happens quite a bit. It does happen, especially when you're teaching contemporary art history. Those Art 21 videos, are you familiar with those? They're
Oh,
phenomenal.
yes. Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you start to have a discussion with the students about what's happening, the thought process, their thought process, the artists, and you have this wonderful conversation, and it just starts to take a life of its own. And it's really nice.
It is. It is. I mean, it's so much better than the old days where, you had to, period style artists, medium, year. It was, basically, they were just filling your head with all these uh, um, details, but you really never got a chance to appreciate the artwork that was you were being exposed to.
Yes.
It was remember, regurgitate.
I don't share my work with the students that often. I want to keep it separate.
Do they find you out, so to speak?
Some do, some don't.
Okay. And how's that experience?
Fine. They will talk about a new piece they've seen of mine, and we'll have a conversation about it. But I try to keep it brief because I'm there as a teacher. I think it does validate me that I am the only visual design teacher at the school, and we have several there, 3 of us, but I'm the only one that works in the real world. I guess I work as an artist, I work as a designer. I just recently, last year, won a silver award for design. So I have skin in the game, and I'm real.
Yeah, you don't.
There is a difference in that. There are, and there's not that there's anything wrong with either way, but there are teachers who teach art, and then there's artists who are teachers. I follow the latter.
I understand exactly.
And it is a difference. It's a different viewpoint. It's a different way of looking at it.
It is. I've worked with faculty that learned from other faculty that learned from other faculty or out of books. So they teach what they know, and I would tell my students, I teach what I know because I've done this. So I'm not just teaching a theory or a concept. I'm teaching a practice, and there's a big difference. Speaking of students, have you ever had the experience of them coming back, but you bumping into them at Shaw's or someplace like that, and them saying something that makes you feel, wow, I could close my eyes forever right now? Any of those kind of moments, or?
I've run into them a few times. They've said,
Mm.
how are you? But no life-changing moments that
Yeah.
I've seen them in college, especially at Mass Art. I would see a few of my students. I've seen them at UMass Dartmouth, and they're always very pleasant.
Right.
Assholes.
Well, they got there because of you.
Yes. Me and the other. Look, everyone. It's
Right.
a team effort. It's not me.
Right.
It's definitely a team effort with all the teachers and the guidance counselors and everyone. But if I help them with their confidence and their belief that they can accomplish anything that they set out to go for, then absolutely I'll accept that.
Okay. Okay. I usually say this, what I call Barbara Walters, or as people that grew up when she was still on television, Barbara Wawa.
Yeah.
A Barbara Wawa question. I usually save these for the end, but I'm gonna do this one in the middle of all of this. If you had a magic wand and you only had one wish, and you could only apply that one wish to your artistic career, what would you wish for?
I would like to be on the level of a Carol Walker someday, and have my work. I would like to be able to be a full-time artist and make a living at it, and have my work collected and be able to spend the months developing a piece and then selling it to a museum or a collector, and just keep focused on that with a part-time teaching gig at a university.
Good wish. Have you ever been to Europe?
Yes, several times.
When people ask you what you did, or when you introduce yourself to someone as an artist, what was the reaction over there in Europe as compared to here in the US?
Night and day. They love, they embrace the arts. They want to talk about the art. They want to see your work. They want to have a conversation with you. In the United States, you're looked at like you're an oddball. Correct?
Yes, sir. And that's probably almost even a thought, because I always tell people I think out loud, and that's why, like, when I used to lecture, I'd be lecturing. It was marketing, for God's sakes, and then all of a sudden something hit me, like, oh God, I gotta get back to the studio, and I'd jot something down. I'd write something on a whiteboard, and it's like, what's that for? Oh, that's a note for myself. But why? What the heck is wrong with this? What is wrong with the United States? And I know that I write, some people who will be listening to this, the hair on their arms and the back of their neck will be going up, and they'll be like ready to lunge out. But seriously, what the hell is wrong with us?
Ron.
And why do we keep thinking we are the greatest in the world when?
Well, it's an illusion. Ron, we look at the education right now. What's it all about? STEM.
Yeah.
You've heard STEM.
Yep.
We have forgotten about music, the arts, poetry, philosophy, the core that makes us human, that gives us empathy, makes us think. We've sold out to mathematics and science, the industries. So that shows where we're headed and what we think is important in the United States of America, sadly.
Yeah. I asked you that question because I set you up, and I was hoping that, you would say what I heard you say, because when I lived in Portugal and people would say, oh, blah, 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 what do you do? I'm an artist. And then, like you said, instantly they want to talk to you. Do you have anything hanging up here? I mean, do you have a studio? And, where have you hung? Is there anything published I can read? Do you have a website? Do you have a card? Over here, it's like, oh yeah, make a living doing that.
Yeah.
And then, speaking of making a living, there are artists. Okay, Figueira da Foz has a population that goes up to almost 100,000, which is the size of New Bedford during the summer. So half of the town is tourists, if you can imagine that. But during the rest of the year, it's about 50,000. And yet there are more than a handful of celebrated successful. And what I mean by successful is they make a living doing what they do, and they are incredibly respected. I have never I have never experienced anything like that in my life. Each one of the artists that I saw, male or female, were treated like the Pope,
Wow.
with reverence and respect. And we're talking different genres, different styles, absolutely phenomenal. And a store, they have this mall that's that was built and operated by the French, called the Foge Mall. And one of the anchor stores is Jumbo, or as they pronounce it, Jumbo. Okay, and you go to Jumbo at the beginning of the school year. And have you ever seen a department store here that had 4 and 5 aisles of art materials for back to school?
No,
I mean, it was jaw dropping.
the art supplies have declined significantly. We have to go to Providence, to Blick, or
Jerry's Autorama.
Jerry's,
Yeah.
which Jerry's in the past was 3 times the size. It was heaven going there when we were in college in the early 2000s. It was a giant warehouse. They had everything you ever wanted. Now it's a third of the place, and you have to order things now.
Yeah.
The arts are not encouraged, but neither is music, philosophy. They're just not encouraged any longer. One time, you're from the area. I remember when I was young, Fuller's, I think it was New
Yes.
Bedford.
Yeah, he was just around the corner from me.
We
Mr.
had
Fuller
3
was the
or 4
nicest guy.
places we could go to, Salt Marsh to buy art supplies.
Right. Salt Marsh
There were
is
3 or
another
4
place.
places we could go.
Yeah.
It's over. It's gone.
Yeah.
We have to go to Providence now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of a, I mean, we would go when I was at SMU, the precursor to UMass Dartmouth. We would, kind of pack a lunch and make a day of it, and we'd go up to Boston, go to Utrecht's, check out the
Yes.
museums, and come back
Yes.
with the bulk oil,
Sure.
the
We did that
bulk oil
also.
paints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go up to Utrecht near Symphony.
Yes. Yeah. And well, don't forget, I was in school in 71 to 75 as an undergraduate, so we were still coming off of that last big hurrah of the arts of the 60s, and then everything sort of like shriveled up, and it wasn't until Basquiat popped his head up
Yeah.
that all of a sudden, wow, art's back. And
It's
then
funny you mentioned him.
Yeah.
Many of my students will ask me the best show I ever went to. It was him at New York at the Gagosian Gallery. Phenomenal.
Yeah. And
His pictures, the pictures do not do the work justice. Powerful.
Yeah.
A young man taken well before his time.
And we have a New Bedford connection to him through Rene Ricard. Rene Ricard, who wrote the seminal article for Art Forum on the Golden Child. The little crown that you would see in a lot of his paintings.
Yes.
And if you saw the bioflick, Julian Schnabel's bioflick Basquiat,
Yes.
I remember seeing that character sitting there in the park, writing, and I found out later that guy was from New Bedford.
Yes.
So that made it kind of a cool thing as well. And I've mentioned this to a lot of people, and I think we've got to get to a point where we just stop talking about it and we actually do it. But as our friend Don would say, well, who's going to pay for this? How is this going to be subsidized? How is this going to be funded? But we really need, and you're in vocational, and the vocational school, the Greater New Bedford Regional Vocational Technical High School. I'm glad that AI answers the phone, because that would be a bugger to go through. It used to just be Voc, but we need a school that covers junior and senior years, junior high school and senior high school. So we're looking from 7th to 12th grade. We need a school of the visual and performing arts in this area. And we have the places to do it in, and we
Yes.
have the faculty. And I think it would put so many kids on another path. What are your thoughts on it?
I would join that staff in a minute, to be able to teach the fine arts and be able to kind of like revisit some of the Bauhaus and the what's happened in Chicago, the Art Institute back in the early days. Look, Swain School was a traumatic loss for us. Traumatic.
Yes.
I remember as a kid, so I knew everyone knew the Swain School. All of us wanted to partake in the arts. I think I think it'd be phenomenal, and we have the space, and it would be fantastic. I know that artworks in the Bedford Art Museum, they've been wonderful to my students. I'm able to put 2 students to work with an artist together, and they have a mentorship program, and it's been phenomenal for my kids. But I can only have 2 kids that can go in that every year, and then it ends with a show, which is phenomenal. But if they could do that full time, wouldn't that be wonderful? If I could have all my kids there to embrace the arts, music, and other things, just to that would be, and Swain addressed some of that, but it's no longer with us, sadly.
Swain did.
I felt it enriched the community.
It did. In fact, it positioned us in a way that the Fall River, who's has a dynamic. I mean, the Fall River art scene is where it is because of people like Patty Rigo driving, pushing every single button that they can, getting people involved and invested. But they don't have the legacy of Swain. And Swain, you have the Swain graduates and all, but there's also people who said, hey, the Saturday morning art classes were the coolest thing because my parents thought it was worth the $10 or whatever it was for the classes.
Yes.
Now, right away, what the first words out of somebody who's not going to accept this concept, whether they don't want to hear about it anymore, or whether they feel it's like an oh honey kind of band-aid. Well, how are they ever going to find work? How are they ever going to make a living?
Well, I graduated '89 from SMU, and I had a relative come up to me and said, "Congratulations, you threw your life away doing the arts." And I said, "That's okay. It's my life." And I have made a very successful living at it. I've been working steadily in the arts since I graduated. It's been wonderful to me. Now, we all know that, Ron. You were a painter. We know as a fine arts painter, you're not going to make a living doing that. That is a passion you have inside you. It's going to take years until you can hopefully sell enough work to be able to be economically viable for yourself, to buy a house and this and that. So we have to do other things. How many classmates do we know who were engineers who became lawyers, or business people that became accountants afterwards? Everything changes, but you can take design, illustration, you can do other things in order to bring income in.
Yeah, I told my students that that's what I consider a portable income. I had a teacher that used to say, young ladies especially get really offended when I say, "Can you type?" But David Ogilvy, they would ask him, "How do you get into advertising?" And he would say, "Can you type?" And they would be like, "Oh my God, chauvinist." And it's like, no, that's one of the ways you get into an advertising agency. Nobody just walks in and sits in the art director's seat.
No.
A friend of mine, most bizarre story. He was the senior vice president of CBS Sports. And I said to him, "Keith, how did you ever get in, CBS Sports?" I mean, he was a senior vice president for 40 years. He's the one that designed the screen that is still used with all the feeds coming in. I'm not a sports guy or sports watcher, but, and he said, I could play softball really well. Now, Keith is black. And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, well, I was minding my own business with a bunch of my friends in Detroit, and we're playing softball, and this car pulls up and says, 'Hey, how would you like a job?' 'Sure.' It's like, doing what?" "Well, working at my advertising agency. But the real reason why I'm hiring you is for you to play softball for us, because all the ad agencies in Detroit at the time had softball teams, and there was this incredible competitive thing Okay. I mean, even more competitive than trying to grab somebody else's account. It was playing softball. So they put him in the mailroom, and next thing you know, he's rising up to the top from the mailroom. And one of his accounts was CBS Sports. And whoever was the president of CBS Sports at the time, or whoever he was dealing with as his client, said, this is ridiculous that I have to come to Detroit and talk to you. He said, why don't you just live in New York? And he's like, well, because I work in Detroit. How am I going to live in New York? He said, easy, I'm giving you the job. So he went from that advertising agency over to New York. But as you were talking, I think it was just in the news lately, 60% of the people who have degrees are not doing what they went to school for.
That's the same statistic at vocational schools.
It
After
is.
5 years, about 60% are not working in the trade that their shops were. It's about
Wow.
60, I believe.
Wow.
And it's very normal.
So that tells me then, we have a very different way in America of looking at things and solving problems. It tells me that there's something else that's going on here. And unfortunately, we're going to have to start winding this down. But what do you think that is? Because, and I think this is a very pertinent question for you because of your socially conscious work that you're doing. I guess that's how we're labeled now, as socially conscious artists, which haven't artists always been socially conscious, but
they always have been.
Yeah. So how do you, why are we the way we are?
I can't answer that.
Why is it that you can't get a job in your town, but you get a job in my town? And oddly enough, unbeknownst to either one of us, I can't get a job in my town, but I end up getting a job in your town. It's the weirdest thing. It's like one cow jumping the fence to Farmer Brown's pasture, and the other cow jumping from Farmer Brown's pasture to Farmer Green's pasture. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Of course, we send away our children. Once they get a degree, we won't see them again. They'll be living in another place.
I try to tell the students that it doesn't happen overnight. You gotta pay the price for a little while. You're not gonna get out of college and expect to be the art director. You're gonna be doing the grunt work. Just accept it. But if you're passionate about it, it will work out. You just got to keep going forward. And there's always, as we know, it's really difficult staying a fine artist. There's a lot of negative connotation to it.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's ever gonna say to you, "Oh, you're doing a great job. I'm so proud of you." They're always skeptics. You have to persevere to be a fine artist. Now, when I graduated fine art, so I'll look at my fine art photography course at UMass Dartmouth, senior year. I think there were 15 of us, and everyone's gonna be a fine artist, Ron. That is,
Mm-hmm.
now they're all gonna be. I think I'm the only one left that's still doing it after 50 years. No, not 50, it'd be 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult. My passion is fine arts. I loved exhibiting. I love creating. I like evolving, learning, doing self-reflection, and making work larger than myself. I love that debate, but I've had to give up some things to do it. And meaning I had to make time for it. So being married has not been an option for me because I don't think I could give her that kind of time, because I spent a lot of time in the studio. I spent a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Will that change someday? Hopefully, but I don't know. I only have so much time. And when I'm in school, I'm 100% for the students. When I'm out of school, I'm at my studio until 7, 8, 9 at night, and I'm there all weekends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a choice I've had to make.
It's a lifestyle. It's a life.
It's all I know, and it's what makes me feel alive.
Yeah.
I don't do it because I want glory or I want money. I don't do it for any of that. It's because I have to do it. It's instilled in us, right?
Yeah.
We have to. It's like breathing.
Yeah. I went through a period of time where, you're doing advertising, layouts. That was back in the day. And most of my accounts were all retail. So it wasn't a very sexy career. When you're doing retail, the only good thing about retail is that that when the sales are going to happen before they happen.
Yes.
Especially with local market. I never went major market or anything like that. And at the end of the day, your brain is so shriveled because you're dealing with, there's always an issue or a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, severe deadline, walking in to a friend of mine who I worked for him. He ran a production house. He did all of the jewelry catalogs for the Providence Attleboro market. And he did, he did all the stats for me, typesetting, the whole, the mechanicals and such. And then I would work for him putting out circulars. It was a great little relationship. And then, having this bone crushing deadline and walking in the morning, the biggest technological screw up that you could possibly do in those days, somebody shut off the wax machine.
Yeah.
So now you can't stick anything on the damn boards, right? And then, towards the end of the day, you're just like burned out. You've had it. There's too much stress. It was like lots of coffee, WHJY, listening to loud rock and roll music, and eating bad food. But even when I was forced to go back into working restaurants, food service, my mind is never off it. And I bumped into a bunch of guys that I went to school with. We graduated in '75. And everybody went through the same exact thing, and it was like jaw-dropping moments. So people said, oh, even though I physically stopped painting, I never stopped painting. I painted it in my head. When I looked at something, I wasn't just looking at it, I was painting it.
Interesting.
So that completely validated that we are in some sort of cult. But anyway, so we're gonna wrap this up, and I'm gonna ask you that final question. The one that, to be reflective on. It's not, I don't toss it out loosely. The whole purpose of the Artist Index, simply put, is to memorialize you. It's to, one of our sponsors and supporters is the New Bedford Whaling Museum. All these podcasts are being digitized and put into their database. And, that's a wonderful thing, because in 30, 40, 50, 60, I don't know, 100 years up the line, I don't know what the media is going to be, but people will be able to access these recordings and find out. Because there's nothing worse than tearing down a house and going, hey, we shouldn't have done that because somebody famous lived there and now we've got nothing, So it's to memorialize the living, working artists of the South Coast. The second thing is a little more problematic. It's trying to go back in time to memorialize the people that weren't memorialized, that are gone, and now it's almost too late, So with all that in mind, how do you want to be remembered?
Wow. That's something I certainly haven't thought about. I passionate about what I do, very good craftsman. I take pride in working with my hands, and hopefully a good teacher who instilled confidence and believed that anyone can overcome their plight with just a little bit of resilience and sometimes a helping hand.
Okay, I just want to know, sometimes, the brain shuts down and it's like, well, there's one more thing just popped in there,
I'm not a comfortable person talking about myself. Don will share that with you. I tend to, be a little
introverted.
Yeah. Where my twin brother is the opposite. He'll talk for hours to anyone. It's just the differences in our personality.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I'm an introvert, but
I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, I know, but what it's been described as, I'm an emerging. In other words, I'm forced to get out of my shell. So anyway, hold on a second. I'm gonna wrap this up. Folks, thanks so much for joining us. I hope that you've had as enjoyable a time as I have. And please, go on to the podcast page and see Keith's page, and access his information. And the next time you have a chance to see his work, go out and see it. Thanks a lot. See you next time. Bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be the artist you believe you are, and let's take care of each other out there.